to the channel. Thank you for taking the time. This is my review of Yellowstone Season 5, Episode 1. So let's just get right into this. We pick up pretty much where we left off from Season 4, with John is now the governor. Jamie is now under Beth's control. Casey and Monica, not so much. Some things have, some time has passed, so things are a little bit different. But for the most part, we didn't really end on such a cliffhanger from Season 3 to Season 4. And to me, that kind of hurt this episode and kind of hurt the opening in general. I've seen Episode 1 and 2. This is just 1. But I don't know. I'm not really feeling the show 100%. I don't think it started off strong. But let's get into just going scene by scene here. Let's talk about some of the stuff. So first of all, we open up with John. He's sitting in a bathroom and he's looking into a mirror. Beth walks in. She starts talking to him, and then she kind of sheds some tears. And he says something along the lines of, you don't need to cry, or you don't need to be sad. And she's like, these are tears of joy. So Beth actually shows some emotion, which is nice because, as I said before, I think Beth isn't that great of a character. I think John's a pretty good character, but Beth, in my opinion, she's very shallow. Anyways, so she leaves, she walks out, and she goes back into the other room. And what we see is that they are in a hotel, and that's the hotel bathroom that John is in. And then we cut to, we see John get a phone call from the opposing governor that he was running against. And he does a simple concession conversation where he's like, congratulations, hope you take care of Montana, so on and so forth. And then we cut from that to John and Jamie and Beth and Linnell. I think it's your name, Linnell. They're walking down a back corridor heading towards a stage. They're going to be making a concession speech, and Jamie, they've already showing Jamie sort of being sad as always. He's kind of a wet rag in my opinion. He really is. He's kind of pointless in this show, to be honest with you. But he kind of hurries in front of them and asks John if he could have the honors of introducing John and Linnell, because Linnell is now a senator and she's going to be heading off to Washington. So he says, okay, and Jamie goes out on the stage. He introduces them both, but before he does, Linnell makes a comment about it's kind of big of him, and it's Beth. She says that he's not doing it for them, he's doing it for himself. It's same bickering type of stuff. So then we see John, he walks out, and I think he gives a good speech, in my opinion. I think whoever's writing this part of the story, I think it's a good speech. It actually kind of sounds political. Now, I'm not big on politicians in general, but in terms of movie land, it's pretty good. And it's funny because you just see Jamie and Beth on stage having a little staring contest, and they're really, when we left them last season, Jamie had killed his father. And he was he was throwing his body off of a cliff, essentially. And Beth was waiting in the shadows somewhere, and she snapped a photo of him dragging the body. And so we're just sort of carrying this on where Jamie and Beth are at odds, but we can already tell that Beth's looking at him like she's got him under her thumb. So, and I've already talked about that. I thought it was ridiculous. I hated it. I thought it was stupid, but regardless, this is where we are now. So then we cut to Rainwater and Mo. They're watching a speech from the casino, and Mo is asking Rainwater, does he think this is good for them or not? And I believe he says he says it's not good for them. So then we cut again, and we see Caroline and Ellis. Again, we're catching up with all the same players from last season. They're watching from a conference room, and Caroline throws a fit. And I said this last year, when she cusses, it's like my grandma's cussing, and it just sounds really awkward and off. And she likes to say fuck, and it just doesn't work for me. But she cusses, and it just sounds goofy, and then she breaks a glass. And then there's this really lame part where they're watching the speech, and we can see John and Linnell. We see all four of them on stage. And then Ellis has to point out that Jamie doesn't look happy. And that he's like, he should be the happiest person right now. He's the governor's son. And to me, it was so on the nose. It was very talk don't tell. I'm sorry, tell, don't show. I don't know, I got that backwards. But it felt like it was obvious. They didn't need to say that. So kind of, and it happens again later on, but I thought it was kind of cheesy. So then Caroline tells Ellis that he needs to call in Sarah Atwood, character we haven't met yet. And she says it's time to take the gloves off. So we're going to ratchet it up even more than it's been. All right. So then we cut to a flashback of Rip and Beth. And I really did not like this. I thought this was trash. This whole flashback of these two characters. Rip, I really like as a character. And I've said, I think Beth and Rip together as characters work. When they're together, they have good chemistry on screen. They seem very believable. She's the wild child and he's sort of, kind of chasing her, and it makes a good dynamic. I actually like them two together. But when we see a young Rip and he is repairing a fence, he's putting in a fence. He's got like a post hole digger or whatever. Anyways, and young Beth comes walking up, and for me, when I saw them, to me they looked maybe between 16 and 18, so they looked pretty young to me, and it was really weird because Rip was like this. He had this like good old boy type mentality, and we know Rip as a character, and we know him when he was young. I mean, they even talk about it like he was a feral dog. He was pretty crazy. And all of a sudden, young Rip is like this aw shucks cowboy, and it just doesn't really work. But really, the worst part about it was young Beth, because to me, it was like the producers and directors of the show had this young actress just do her best Beth impersonation. So take adult Beth and then just exactly do the same things that she does as an adult. And it just didn't work. It does not work. It was really off-putting, to be honest with you. The things that she was saying, it was just really annoying how she spoke and the language that she was using. I'm not talking about cuss words. She was talking very 2022. It was very current day speak and the way she spoke, and it just was super fucking annoying. I did not like it at all. The other thing that I didn't like was so they get together, they go on a date, she's asking him out. That's how the flashback starts. And then we see him getting ready, then they meet in the bar and they head down to, I don't know, they go into town. That's all they really say. And they go into a bar, and again, if I had to guess, if I saw them on the street, I'd be like, what are they, like 17, 18, maybe 18, but I don't think they're older than 18. So they go into this bar, and young Beth is talking to the bartender, just all loose and shit. Like it just, and then she's like really mouthy, like older Beth. And it just sucks. Like there's no growth. It's like, okay, so she's been this way her whole life, but we saw her as a young lady when she had to deal with the abortion and, the whole Jamie story arc and why she hates him so much. She actually seemed like a child. She was scared. She was, going to her big brother for help. She was in trouble. There was real emotion there. And this literally is just mini Beth. That's all this is. And it just doesn't work. It doesn't work for me. And furthermore, she has to show her cleavage. Like the bartender asks her for ID, and she leans in and shows her cleavage. And it's very off-putting for me because she's a kid. And what the hell are you doing? Like, what's up, Yellowstone, with having a young girl show her cleavage? It just, to me, it was really off-putting. Normie wife hated it. I hated it. Could have done without the entire flashback. I thought it sucked. I thought it was poor acting. I thought it was poor writing. And legit, like, Rip is just like this. He just was like this little good boy or some shit. It just didn't work. The whole thing just didn't work. And I guess it's supposed to be, I don't know. I don't think it's not empowering to show like a teenage girl showing her cleavage to get drinks and drink underage. Now, I may sound like some old curmudgeon and I'm just acting like an old man, but I'm sorry. I have an 18-year-old daughter, and this just doesn't work for me. It's not appealing in any way. Anyways, the best part of this scene. Oh, I'm sorry. One last thing. So Rip ends up leaving her at the bar. And then we see him back at the barn, and he's sitting on the back of a pickup truck. And then we see the rest of the ranch hands. They met up with him. So then the ranch hands pull up, and Beth's with them. And she gets out, starts making out with one of them, and then she pulls him into the back seat. So once again, it's like, okay, so some teenage girl having sex in the backseat of a car is cool, I guess, you know. And again, I was a kid once, you know. I've been the young one in the room who's like, oh man, these old people, just stop it. You don't know what it's like to be a kid. Maybe that's just me. Maybe it's just my age. But to me, it was a really off-putting scene, and I just didn't like it at all. And just in general, if you took out that part where she gets in the back seat to have sex with a man, and then showing her cleavage at the bar, just remove that, and I would still hate the scene, because it was just stupid. It was just a little mini Beth. That's all it was. And furthermore, it's like the way she was talking. Geez, it was just it really was. It was like 2022 feminism speak back in like the 80s, which it didn't fit. So just poor writing, poor choices. I just didn't like this at all. But then she wakes up, and so this flashback was a dream. And then Beth comes downstairs, and it's early in the morning. Rip's getting ready to go to work, and she comes in, and she's teary-eyed, and she starts apologizing. He's like, well, what'd you do now? And in a joking way. And to me, I thought that this actually was the best scene for Beth in a really long time, because she was genuinely apologizing to him for how she treated him. Because if you go back to season 1, the first time we see Rip and Beth have their relationship, she pulls him aside, has sex with him, and then just totally kicks him to the curb. Now, season 1 Beth, I thought was a really cool character, in that I was interested in where her arc was going to go. She was a total mess. She was a drug addict. She had alcohol problems, and she was always fucked up, and she was just a total mess. But it was like she was going to clean up, right? At some point, she was going to go through this arc, and I was like very interested in, because she was crazy. She was wild. She was just doing crazy shit. No one could control her. And then obviously, you know, Hollywood lost their fucking mind, and they don't know how to write a woman now. They just don't. They write women in a very specific certain way. And in season 2, they just totally changed her character, and now she drinks without any problems. There's no sort of alcohol problems. She's 100% control of her addiction, and there was no arc to get there. It wasn't like she achieved it over time or she earned it. It was just like, no, we want to make her really cool and powerful, so let's just forget about what happened in season 1. I really don't like that. I've harped on that before, and I've harped on her character before, but at this point, it just is what it is. She's been this way this is now season 5, so this is the 4th season where we just basically just scrap season 1 Beth, and this is who she is now. But I thought it had some meaning to it. It had some, you know, because of that season 1 interaction with Rip and the way she treated him, you know, and you can tell Rip was like kind of like a little puppy dog chasing her. Like, he was really into her, and she didn't give a shit about him. So that actually kind of fit the flashback, or her dream, or whatever. It sort of fit in that way, but it was like this really unbelievable story of like what was happening when they were like teenagers is now happening when they're in their mid 40s. You know, it's like the exact same thing, no growth whatsoever. That's just really unbelievable, because, you know, 18-year-olds today, in 20 years, they will not be the same person at all. I am not the same person that I was 10 years ago, let alone 20 years ago. And to me, to just link them together as though nothing happened and there was no growth, I think it's poor writing, you know. And this show, you know, it has ups and downs. It's, you know, it's got moments where I think the writing is pretty solid, and then it's got moments like this where, you know, like the her apologizing and that sort of emotional scene. I thought it was good writing. I actually like that. So again, it kind of evened out that terrible dream or flashback. But for the most part, there were just more things about the flashback that I hated, that I just was like, okay, I guess it just didn't really work for me. But, you know, she did have an emotional response. She apologized to Rip. They had a nice touching moment, kissing and everything. Everything was all good. So, you know, take it for what it is, but I just didn't like it. All right, so let's move along here. So then there's this big party setup. They're having a party on the Yellowstone ranch, and it's the governor's, I don't know, like a like inauguration party, or I don't know what you call it, but it's basically him celebrating him being governor. And we see a big old stage is being set up right behind where the cowboys work and where the horses are and stuff. And Rip is totally annoyed and he's barking at people and he's just irritated. Rip being Rip, so I thought it was kind of cool. And then now we see John and Linnell. So they're having a little chat about his future governorship. And to me, I really like Linnell's character, and I like the way she's mentoring John, because he has no idea what he's doing. He's not a politician. He's a rancher. And now he's in like knee deep in politics. He is a politician. And I really like her character. I think it's a nice, and I think they have good chemistry, as actors, but I think it's a nice balance between her trying to help him and him just being this rough and tumble, John Dutton, where he just wants to fucking just tell people what to do, and then that's that. He doesn't really like pushback, and he's not used to getting it, but she's a really cool balance for him, so I like her. Okay, so one of the things that this episode did that just annoyed the shit out of me. So it's time to catch up with Casey. This whole scene to me was a joke. It started off kind of what's going on, but then it just ended as total trash. So we open up with a group of these white militia men. So they're wearing like army fatigues, but it looks like army surplus store type shit. But they look like militia. That's what they look like. I don't think that's what they're kind of going for. So, but they're horse thieves, and they're running from Casey and the livestock gang that he's with, and they have a helicopter and all these horses and everything. So they're chasing these guys, and we find out that they're right at the border, at the Canadian border. So the leader of the thieves, he's telling and he's instructing the group to make it to the border. Do you want to spend time in an American prison or Canadian prison? Okay, no problem. So they get to the border, and there's like 20, I don't know what you call them, Mounties, or whatever Canadian police are or livestock agents are in Canada, but they're literally lined up along the bank over this very small river. Like it's not really that big, and you could ride across it. And so these guys, they drive these horses. And by the way, they have like 20 or 15 or 20 horses that they're sort of stealing from somewhere, obviously. So they're driving these horses while they're running from Casey on horseback. They get to the river, they get into the water, and they're we can see like they're right there about to be on Canadian soil. And then out of nowhere, Casey just teleports in front of them. Like it didn't make any logistical sense. We can see that Casey and his group are pretty far behind them, but they're chasing them. And then all of a sudden the thieves get into the water with the horses, and then it cuts, and then there's Casey, and he's actually riding past him in the water. It was so fucking silly. And the worst part about it is he gets to the other side of the shore and he just yells, "Get back." That's it. Get back, get back. He says it a couple times. And the men, the militia or the horse thieves, they're like, "Oh man, damn." And they turn around and they head back. And it's just Casey, just one guy on horse. And it's like probably 5-7 of them plus another 15-20 horses. They could have just rode right through his ass. But for whatever reason, they stop and they turn around. But the horses continue on. The horses that they stole continue on to the Canadian side. And for whatever reason, they turn around. It was just so dumb. It was so forced. And then there's some cheesy back and forth between Casey and the head, Mountie or whatever the hell he is. He takes a couple of shots at him and kind of insults him. And then he talks them into letting the horses come back to the American side. It was dumb. The whole scene just did not. It started off kind of cool, but then it just ended flat on his face because of that. It made no sense. Those guys could have just plowed right over his ass and kept on rolling, and they wouldn't have. Even the guys, the Mounties, they were just standing they're standing side by side on their horsebacks. All of those horses could have just plowed right through them. They could have made a big mess of things, but yeah, whatever. TV land. All right, so now we cut to John, and we see him. He's preparing to make another speech. He's talking to an actor that I talked about he was in last season. His name's Buck Taylor. I like him. He's in a movie that I really love called Tombstone, so it's good to see him again. Then we see John. They go outside. They're in front of the governor's. I guess it's town hall or whatever, the capital of the town or whatever. So there's people outside. There's news and everything, and he's going to get sworn in. So then he goes out, and it's this really long, slow motion walk of everybody coming out. And then he goes to get sworn in, and he puts his hand on the Bible. And for whatever reason, he like pauses and he won't repeat what the judge is telling him. Like, say your name. He has to say it like 3 times. And then Beth has to come over and tell him, Daddy, say the name, say your name. And then he finally does. I don't know if that's like foreshadowing that he really doesn't want to be governor or he hates it. We already know that he doesn't want to be governor. He's kind of intimated already. He bitches about it. So I don't know. I just thought it was kind of a weird little addition to that scene. All right. So then where are we at here? Okay. So, okay. Now this shit was funny. This is another poorly written character. So Angela Blue Thunder is her name. And she is, if I'm not mistaken, she's like Rainwater's cousin or niece or something. But regardless, she's part of Rainwater's tribe. And she was brought in last season, I believe, to really, I don't know. Her character hasn't done shit. And maybe they're going to make her character more prominent this season, but she really hasn't done much. They kind of introduced her as like this boardroom badass that she's going to come in and she's going to show the Duttons what's up. I don't know. It never really panned out. And Rainwater has been shelved. He was pretty much shelved all last season. There was really no story with Rainwater in season 4, which sucked. So she's sitting next to, actually, I think she's sitting, I can't remember, she's sitting behind him. That's right. She's sitting in the seat right behind him. Angela is. And this is her words. I had to write this shit down. So John is being sworn in, and she leans forward. And first of all, her delivery is so robotic. She sounds like a fembot. There's just no nuance to her. There's no, like, she's very just stone-faced, and she always stares off, and she just looks weird. I don't know what the hell. But this is what she said. She said, "You had a chance to be rid of him. You did nothing, and he grew stronger. It's slave rules for you now, and it's all your fault." That's what, and that was supposed to be this really like, the music was there and it was like, oh, she put him in his place. And Rainwater doesn't even respond. He just kind of looks at her like he's like, oh shit. It's like, fucking say something. It's just so stupid. It was so forced. I thought it was dumb as hell. So anyways, John, after has been sworn in, he gives a little speech. And I thought it was a good speech. Like I said, whoever's writing these lines for his speeches, they're pretty good. But he immediately says that he's killing the funding for the airport development. So Jamie and Beth, they're on stage with him. And after they're done, Jamie has a physical reaction to John saying he's killing the airport development. And it's too on the nose. Like, his reaction is too on the nose. But afterwards, Jamie and Beth have this little back and forth. And it's just the same shit where it's just cliche lines where they really do. They just sit down. I feel like the writers just sit down and they look at all of the cliche or badass lines that were said in all these other movies. And they're like, how do we fit these in? How do we get Beth to say these things? Because it just sounds so forced. It's terrible writing for her. All right. So then John, Jamie, and Beth, they're in a car and I don't remember where they're going, but they're being driven. Then I actually thought this was one of the best parts of the episode. Their interaction was like the first time that we saw Jamie and John having a conversation. Season 4, they talked one time, if I'm not mistaken, and that was on a phone. They had a phone conversation. There was so much that was Jamie over here plotting his political plans with his ex-girlfriend, his baby, and his dad on his ranch. We never saw anything other than that. They just talked about what he was going to campaign with. Whatever, that's done. But so having Jamie there with Beth and John actually bantering, it was kind of nice. And furthermore, he spoke with some intelligence. He wasn't just a bumbling idiot. That's what he's been for the last 3 seasons. He has been a useless piece of shit character. He does nothing. He adds nothing to the show outside of giving Beth a scratching post, something that she can just dominate and look tough. Like, that's really Jamie's sole purpose of being on this show. So they had a good conversation. John puts them both in check because they're arguing. He tells them shut the fuck up, and I thought it was cool. And then, he says something that I thought had some meaning behind it when he says, your mother would roll over in her grave if she saw what a mess that I have made of this family. So, he's still taking ownership as a father. Their problems as siblings, and they're not true brother and sister, but regardless, they were raised as brother and sister. To me, it was kind of nice to see John sort of shoulder that load a little bit. I kind of like that part. All right, so now we're going to move along here. So we finally catch up with the ranch hands before the big party. I thought it was cool. Not the best writing, in my opinion. Their banter and dialogue, it's believable, but just barely. It just feels like someone's struggling on how to write how people talk, like real sort of banter and shit talking. It's not trash. It just wasn't strong to me. And then they carry this on. They go outside. By now, the stage is set up. They're all in their pretty Yellowstone shirts, and they're ready to go have a party. And they run into another group of cowboys from another ranch. It's a little more back and forth banter between them. And then they head off and they start doing they do some little game or whatever. They're some little roping game, whatever. We'll get to that. But it was okay. Not bad. I mean, I like those characters. I like all of them. Colby and everybody. I think they're good. All right, so then we get a little nice montage of the rope game, and them. I'm not going to get into it. They're playing this game, so I don't know what it is, but they're having fun. And there's a woman who's watching these guys, and but Teeter's there too, and she's watching them play this game, and she's leaned up against the fence, and then here comes Beth. And to me, it felt like last season. They did this once before, where Beth talks to a woman. She gives a couple of lines of fucking wisdom, and then it changes the woman's life. Like, just right then and there, just like she waves a wand and they're not the same person that they used to be. But the woman who's watching, she's saying that she doesn't like cowboys. She won't date them because they're too into their job. They're too into being a cowboy, too into rodeos. She wants to be first. And Beth says along the lines of, I don't want to be first. I want a man who has his life that he can share with me. Not a bad line, not at all. I actually thought it was pretty good. And also, that's right, I forgot, she's the woman is wearing some like flashy clothes, and Beth starts she doesn't really talk shit on her, but she makes comments about her clothes, and we find out that she's a singer, so she's going to go on stage and sing because there's a band playing in the background. Again, she walks off. She's going to go be with her cowboy, and then that sort of leads into the girl or the woman. And Ryan, one of the cowboys, one of the main ranch hands who's been since season 1, he hits on her, and then it's like, oh, Beth gave him this advice, so now she's willing to date a cowboy. I don't know. It just was cheesy. It just didn't really work for me. But Beth does leave. She goes and sits with Rip. Rip's sitting off on like a hillside, looking down on the ranchers and the party essentially. And he makes kind of an interesting observation, that. They're in a position now that Beth makes the point that John is now in a position, and her are in a position to keep the ranch from being taken. And Rip made an interesting point that the entire state was here before John was governor. Why wasn't anybody helping us then? And it was kind of an interesting point. It was like, John had to go be governor to keep the Yellowstone from being taken. And then he says, like, this place is going to get taken. He's going to lose this place. And he gets up and walks off. So I thought it was pretty good. It was not like I said, Rip and Beth's dynamic, I think it really works well. I really do. I like it. All right. So now we finally see Monica and Tate. Oh, boy. This one. Oh, boy. Okay. So Casey is up north. He's on, and he gets a call from Monica, and she calls from her house, and we see that she is like ready to pop. She's well into her third trimester. She's got a big old belly. They're like waiting for her to have this baby at any day now. So it's what it looks like in the way she talks on the phone to him. So she says she's having contractions. She's going to go to the hospital. He says, start heading to the hospital. I'm sending an ambulance. They'll meet you on the road. Okay. So then we see Monica's driving. Tate's in the passenger seat, and she's in, they're in like a standard coupe, like a Maxima or some shit. And she's driving like shit. First of all, she's fucking flying. She's like hauling ass. Again, I'm not okay, but it's just, she's not driving well, and she's having these contractions so bad that she's swerving all over the road, that the pain is affecting her ability to drive. Tate looks like I mean, these kids on these shows, they grow up, and it's so funny because you just kind of forget just how fast children grow up, because Tate from last season to this season, he's like a foot taller. His voice is different, which is cool, but he's not a little boy anymore. And he looks every bit of 14 years old, 15 years old. Hell, I was driving when I was like 12 or 13. I just thought it was weird. And he actually makes a comment about, Mom, let me drive. And she's like, you're not old enough to drive. While she's like looking down at the floor, holding her belly, screaming. And he's like, I can drive better than this, because she's all over the fucking place. And I was like, this is kind of dumb. Like, you're putting everyone in danger. Woman, what are you doing? Pull over. Just wait for the ambulance or something. None of it was working. To me, it felt really forced. Then it just compounded the whole situation. Then we cut and we see some rando guy, some extra, driving a truck, and he's not paying attention. He's got grocery bags sitting next to him in his pickup truck. He's reaching in, trying to get some snackums and shit, and he's like not paying attention whatsoever. Then you had the third layer, which was fucking hysterical to me. Then we see a fucking huge buffalo is like walking slowly onto the road, and they all magically convene at that exact point at the exact same time, where Monica is not, and she's not paying attention. She's talking to Tate, like eyes fully on him, talking to him. And I'm like, keep your eyes on the fucking road. First of all, you're all over the place. You're doing 65, 70, slow the hell down. It's just like, none of it was making any logical sense to me. And then you get the comedic luck of the buffalo is right there, and then the car, their car and the other guy's truck meet at the exact point where the buffalo is. They swerve, boom, they get into an accident. It was so forced. It was so dumb. They could have done this in such a simpler way, and it would have made actual sense. I was laughing. I was like, this is so stupid. You didn't have to go through and add these other two layers. She could have had like major contraction pains, and then she swerved over, hit some gravel, and then she lost control. They ditched the car. It would have worked just fine, but no, they had to like ratchet up all the luck, and I thought it was I thought it was cheesy. To me, it just didn't work. So then we cut to John the next morning, and he's walking through the barn. He has a good conversation with Carter. He is back again, growing like a wild weed. He's like as tall as John now, and he was nowhere near this height last season. But it looks to be the same actor. Normie wife was like, that's not the same kid, but I'm pretty sure it is. But he has a nice conversation with Carter. He makes jokes about Carter growing and everything, and then he heads on out of the barn, and he runs into no, he doesn't run into him. Jamie, God, what's her name? Jeez. Oh my God, I forgot her name. Beth. Jeez, I would just drew a total blank. Jamie and Beth are there with because they now have like a convoy of cars wherever John goes. He's a politician. He's got security. He's got a driver and everything now. And Jamie immediately says, we need to go to, I forgot I've already said, like Bozeman or something like that, or some other town. And he says, why? And then we cut and we see them at the hospital. And I really like this scene. John sees Casey laying in bed with Monica. She's all beat up and bruised up. Obviously the baby's not, in her anymore. And then we see Tate. He's sitting outside their hospital room, and he's got a cast on his wrist, and he's all busted up in the face. And I thought he did a really good job. His name's Brecken Merrill, and I thought his acting, it was good. Like I don't know. I've been kind of, he's meh actor so far, but I don't know. He kind of ratcheted up a little bit. It was really touching. He says, I had a little brother for 1 hour, and then he tells John, we named him John. So I thought it was a good scene. It was obviously very sad. It just bummed me out that they had to go through such stupid, like jump through all these hoops just to make this accident happen. I just thought it was dumb. But the ending of it, the result of it was obviously very sad. Monica lost her baby. Tate's upset. Casey's, they just look like just total distraught. And that was it. Roll credits. So that was episode 1. To go from season 4's opener, actually to back up even further, to go from season 3's ending, the season finale, where bullets are flying, bodies are on the ground, bombs are going off, just all this crazy shit's happening. and then to have that year off where you don't know what's going on as a viewer, then to lead into the first 15 minutes of season 4, episode 1, that was such a banger. Like that, those 15 minutes were really good. I mean, they weren't perfect, but they were really good, action packed. It ended up kind of canceling out some of it because everyone was fine. Literally an episode later, everyone is back to normal. No big deal. So, but it's still, to have that kind of a banger of an opening, to have this opening, I just don't think it was that good. It doesn't really measure up to me. A lot of the story beats are just the same. It's more of the same, more of the big corporation, just sort of, trying to pour concrete all over Montana. They're fighting for their ranch. It's kind of feeling very, very samey, like really, like it just feels like the same story all over again. The characters is exactly the same. Beth's character is whoever's writing her shit, she's fucking terrible writing. The things she says, I thought it would kind of be nice to have Jamie in the fold so that there would be some sort of banter. We get a little bit of that, but no, it's just, she just bosses him around, beats him up verbally and all this other crap. The young version of Rip and Beth I thought was fucking trash. Hated it. Hated that entire setup. Did not like it. The border scene with Casey I thought was silly and ridiculous. And, the car crash I thought was silly. But like I said, it ended in it landed really heavy. There was a lot of weight to that situation. So, all in all, I mean, it wasn't terrible. Wasn't the worst opening to season 5, but I was really expecting more. I wanted it to kind of hit me, heavy, and they just didn't do it for me. So, but that's it. That's all I got to say. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed the show. If you are watching this, if you got anything to say, leave a comment. You can always email if you want to. If you like what you heard, share it with a friend, click the subscribe button, and you have a great day. And by the way, happy Thanksgiving. This is Thanksgiving weekend, so I hope you're having a great Thanksgiving, or you had one. I hope you're having a great weekend, and time off, and time with your families. Other than that, I will let you go, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.